Hey guys, in today's video, you will learn the impactful story of Sutton Ashford, a young woman who went through a near-death experience and received a shocking revelation about the future of humanity. Get ready for an exciting journey, full of twists and mysteries. Before we start, comment below which city you are watching this video from, and if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, take the opportunity to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any new stories. Let's go on this incredible journey together. Hello, my name is Sutton. I'm 48 years old now, but the story I'm going to tell happened when I was 20. I'm an ordinary person, like anyone else you might encounter walking the streets of Austin, Texas. I work as an accountant, I'm married, I have 2 children, and I lead a pretty normal life. Well, at least that's what it looks like from the outside. Because inside me, I carry an experience that completely changed my view of the world and life. Have you ever wondered what happens when we die? I used to think about it from time to time, like everyone else, I guess, but I never paid much attention. Until that summer night in 1996, when I had what doctors call a near-death experience, or NDE. It was something so profound, so transformative, that even after almost 3 decades, I still get emotional talking about it. No, I have not written books on the subject, nor have I founded any spiritual groups. In fact, for a long time, I kept this experience to myself and those closest to me. But today I feel it's important to share, not to convince anyone of anything, but to offer a different perspective on life and death. What I'm about to tell you may seem strange, even impossible to some. It's okay, I understand. If someone had told me something like that before that night, I probably would have reacted with skepticism too. But I ask that you listen with an open mind, because what I experienced was so real, so vivid, that it fundamentally changed who I am. This is the story of how I died for a few minutes and came back. It's the story of how I saw the other side and received a message that still echoes in my mind to this day. It's the story of how I discovered that there is much more to our existence than we can see or touch. So if you're ready, let's go back to that hot summer night in Austin, when I was just a young 20-year-old with no idea what the universe was about to show me. It was summer in Austin, Texas in 1996. I remember it like it was yesterday. The air was hot and heavy, full of that electricity that only a Texas summer can bring. The cicadas sang non-stop, creating a nocturnal symphony that seemed to rock the entire city. I was 20 years old and living what seemed like the best phase of my life. You know that feeling that the world is yours and that anything is possible? That's exactly how I felt. I was dating Evan, an amazing guy I met in college. That night we were with our friends Sarah and Jeremy, ready to enjoy an outdoor music festival on Lake Travis. We started the evening with dinner at a small local restaurant. The place was packed, full of people excited for the festival. I remember ordering a seafood dish, something I loved but didn't eat often. The food was delicious and the atmosphere was perfect. We laughed, we made plans for the future, we discussed which bands we wanted to see at the festival. It was a night like so many others we had experienced, and I had no idea that it would be the last normal night of my life. It was Evan who noticed it first. We were leaving the restaurant when he suddenly stopped and looked at me with a strange expression. "Sutton, you have some red spots on your neck," he said, frowning. I laughed and shrugged. I've had allergies since I was a child, but never anything serious. "It must be some of the seasoning in the food," I joked without paying much attention. But as we walked towards the festival, I started to feel strange. It was as if the world around me was becoming more and more distant. My friends' voices seemed like distant echoes. The streetlights started to get blurry. I tried to concentrate, thinking maybe it was just tired. We arrived at the festival entrance and the queue was huge. The sound of the bands was already reaching us, mixed with the excited buzz of the crowd. On any other night I would be excited, eager to get in, but at that moment all I could feel was a growing dizziness. "Evan," I managed to mumble, "I'm not feeling well." I tried to hold on to his arm, but my legs felt like they had turned to jelly. I saw his face turn into a mask of concern. I heard Sarah scream my name. And then, nothing. The world simply disappeared. It was as if someone had turned off the lights in the universe. One moment I was there, standing at the entrance to the festival, and the next second, the most extraordinary and inexplicable experience of my life began. What happened next is difficult to describe in words. How can we explain something that goes beyond everything we know in the physical world? But I'll try, because it's important that you understand. There was no pain. There was no fear. It was as if something inside me had clicked, and suddenly I was no longer tied to my body. I heard a sound, something like a buzzing sound followed by a plop, as if something had disconnected. And then I was floating. Imagine the lightest feeling you have ever felt. Now multiply that by 1,000. It was as if the entire weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. I felt infinitely light, free from any physical restrictions. The strangest thing is that I was still me. All my thoughts, my memories, my essence, everything was there. But my physical body, that was behind us. All around me was darkness, but it wasn't a frightening or oppressive darkness. It was a welcoming, almost comforting emptiness. It was like being wrapped in a soft, warm blanket, only this blanket was made of, nothing. And in that emptiness, I felt more alive than I had ever felt before. Every part of me vibrated with an energy I had never experienced. It was as if, for the first time, I was experiencing what it meant to be truly alive. There was no more Austin, no more music festivals, no more earthly concerns. It all seemed so distant, so insignificant compared to what I was experiencing. And then I realized I could move. Not with legs or arms, but with thought. All I had to do was think about going somewhere, and there I was. There were no limits. There were no barriers. I was free to explore this new realm of existence. It was at that moment that I understood. I had left my body behind. I was experiencing something that went beyond life as we know it. I was having a near-death experience. But at that moment, death seemed like such an inappropriate word, because what I was feeling wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. As I moved into this new state of being, I began to realize that the emptiness around me wasn't really empty. It was full of something. Energy, perhaps? Conscience? It's hard to find the right words, but it was as if the space itself was alive. There was nothing to see in the traditional sense, and there were no shapes, colors, or objects, but I could feel it. And what I felt was a vast, welcoming presence. It was as if the entire universe was embracing me. The more I explored, the more I felt connected to everything. It was as if my every thought made waves in this ocean of consciousness, and I could feel the waves coming back. I wasn't alone there. I was connected to something much bigger than I could imagine. And the time? Time just didn't exist anymore. There was no past, present, or future. Everything was now. I could see, although not with my eyes, my entire life at once. Every moment, every decision, every experience was there, not as a linear sequence, but as a unified whole. In this state, I began to understand things I had never understood before. I saw how every action I had ever taken affected not only my life, but the lives of everyone around me. I saw the invisible connections that connect us all. It was as if I could see the fabric of the universe, and each of us was a thread in this immense and complex fabric. And the most incredible thing? I didn't miss my body. I didn't miss anything in the physical world. There, in that state, I felt complete, full, as if I had finally arrived home after a long journey. I remember thinking, so this is it. This is how it should be. All the struggle, all the pain, all the worries of earthly life seemed so distant, so unnecessary. There I understood. I knew. It all made sense in a way I never had before. It was in that moment of deep understanding that something began to change. A new sensation began to form. It was as if the void itself was calling me to something more, something beyond. And that's when I heard the song. At first it was just a distant whisper. a sound so soft that I thought it was just my imagination. But little by little, it became stronger, clearer. It was music, but not like any music I had ever heard before. Imagine the most beautiful symphony you have ever heard. Now imagine this symphony being played not by instruments, but by the very fabric of the universe. Every note was pure energy, pure light. It was as if the stars, the planets, the entire galaxies were singing in perfect harmony. The music enveloped me, penetrated me. I wasn't just listening with ears that no longer existed. I was feeling every note with my entire being. Each vibration resonated through my essence, making me feel part of that grand cosmic composition. And then, without thinking, I started moving. It wasn't a dance in the physical sense. I no longer had a body, after all. It was more like my spirit, my consciousness, was merging with the music. Each note took me further, expanded me more. As I danced, I felt myself growing, not in physical size, but in consciousness. It was as if each movement connected me more deeply with everything that existed. I was the music and the music was me. Together we danced through the cosmos. In this dance I saw things that defy description. I saw the creation and destruction of stars. I saw the birth of new galaxies and the collapse of old ones. I saw the ebb and flow of life itself, not just on Earth, but throughout the universe. And with each vision, with each new understanding, the music changed. Sometimes she was joyful, celebrating creation. Other times she was melancholy, lamenting the end of a cycle. But she was always, always beautiful. I don't know how long I danced like that. It could have been seconds or millennia. Time no longer had meaning. I was completely immersed in this experience, happier and more at peace than I had ever been. It was then that I felt it. A change in the music, a new note that wasn't there before. It was as if the symphony was reaching a crescendo, taking me somewhere, for something. I felt an expectation rising within me. Something was about to happen, something important. The music became more intense, more urgent. It was guiding me, calling me, and I followed, eager to find out what came next. As the music guided me, I felt like I was getting closer to something. It was as if I was about to cross a threshold, an invisible but palpable border. The expectation within me grew with each moment. And then, suddenly, I stopped. Not by choice, but because something stopped me. It was as if he had hit an invisible wall. The music continued, calling me to move forward, but I couldn't move forward. It was at that moment that I heard the voice. A male voice, powerful and at the same time gentle, echoed through the void. "Little Suddy," said the voice, using the nickname only my family used. "You can't go on." I was shocked, not just because of the sudden presence of that voice, but because of the use of my childhood nickname. Who was it? How did you know me? And why was it stopping me from continuing? "But I want to go," I argued, surprised to find that I could still talk. "I'm so close. I can feel it." The voice responded with a mixture of firmness and compassion. "I know, little Suddy, but it's not your time. You have to go back." To go back? The idea filled me with dread. Returning meant leaving all this peace, all this understanding. It meant returning to the limitations of the physical world, to pain, to fear, to uncertainty. How could they ask me that? "I don't want to go back," I said, feeling what could be described as tears if I still had a body to cry in. "This is where I belong. I belong here." The voice was silent for a moment, as if it was considering my words. When he spoke again, there was a deep understanding in his tone. "I understand, Sutton. I really do. But there's something you need to see before you make that decision." Suddenly, the space around me changed. It was no longer the welcoming emptiness, but a series of images and sensations that passed through me in rapid succession. I saw Evan, my boyfriend, his face contorted with pain and worry as he tried to revive me. I saw my parents receiving the news of my collapse, the fear in their eyes as they rushed to the hospital. I saw my friends, Sarah and Jeremy, in shock, unable to process what was happening. Each vision was like a stab in my heart. I could feel their pain, their fear, their anguish. It was overwhelming. "They'll get over it," I argued, but my voice shook. "They have each other. They'll be fine without me." The voice responded gently. "Yes, eventually they would get over it. But it's not just about them, Sutton. It's about you too. About what you still have to do." Before I could ask what this meant, new visions emerged. This time, they were scenes I didn't recognize. People I had never seen before, places I didn't know. And in every scene I was there, somehow making a difference. Helping, comforting, changing lives in ways I couldn't fully understand. "You have a mission, Sutton," said the voice. "Something only you can do." I remained silent, trying to process everything I was seeing and feeling. Part of me still wanted to stay, wanted to continue in this state of peace and understanding. But another part was beginning to understand. "What will happen if I go back?" I finally asked. The voice seemed to hesitate for a moment. "I can't show you everything. Some things you'll have to discover for yourself. But there's something you need to know, something important." And then, another vision formed before me. I saw planet Earth, but something was different. Between October 9th and 13th, 2024, a global transformation would occur. I saw scenes of chaos and confusion, but also glimpses of hope and renewal. "A crisis will shake humanity," the voice explained. "It will be a time of great challenge and suffering, but it will also be the beginning of something new, something better. And you, Sutton, will have a part to play in that." I was stunned by the magnitude of what was being shown. But what can I do? I'm just one person. "Sometimes," said the voice, "one person is all it takes to make a difference." I looked once again at the invisible barrier that prevented me from continuing. On the other side, I could feel peace, total understanding, the end of all doubts and fears. It was tempting, incredibly tempting. But then I thought about Evan, about my parents, about everyone I loved. I thought about the people I didn't yet know, the lives I could touch. And I thought about that date in 2024, about the role that I would apparently have to play. With a sigh that seemed to come from the depths of my soul, I made my decision. "Okay," I said. "I'll be back." The voice responded with what seemed to me to be a smile. "You are brave, Sutton, more than you know. Remember that in the difficult days ahead." Before I could respond, I felt a force pulling me. It was like being sucked into a vortex, drawn back into something that felt too small to contain me. The last thing I heard was the voice saying, "Remember, Sutton, remember." And then, everything went dark. Coming back into my body was, well, there are no words to adequately describe it. It was like trying to stuff the entire ocean into a bottle. Painful doesn't even begin to come close. Suddenly I was back. The weight of my physical body was crushing. Each breath was a Herculean effort. Gravity, which I hadn't even noticed before, now felt like an unrelenting force pulling me down. I opened my eyes, and the light blinded me. The sounds were deafening, the beeping of hospital machines, the worried voices around me. Every sensation was amplified 1,000 times. The sheet on my skin felt like sandpaper. The smell of hospital disinfectant almost made me vomit. "She's awake," I heard someone scream. It was Evan's voice, choked with emotion. I felt his hand squeezing mine, but it was as if there was a barrier between us. I was there, but at the same time I wasn't there. The doctors and nurses sprung into action, asking questions, checking my vitals. I wanted to respond. I wanted to tell them that I was fine, more than fine. But my throat was dry, my tongue too heavy to form words. I closed my eyes again, trying to reorient myself. The memory of my experience was still vivid, so real it made the world around me seem like a confusing dream. I wanted to go back. I wanted that peace again, but he knew he couldn't. I had made a choice. I had a mission. When I finally managed to speak, my voice was hoarse and weak. "Evan," I whispered. He leaned over me, tears in his eyes. "I'm here, Sutton. I'm here." I looked at him, trying to find the right words. How to explain the inexplicable? How do you tell someone about an experience that challenged everything we knew about reality? I was up there, was all I could say. I saw the confusion in his eyes mixed with relief and concern. He probably thought I was delirious, confused after what doctors later told me was a nearly 5-minute cardiac arrest. In the days that followed as I recovered in the hospital, I tried several times to tell Evan, my parents, the doctors, what had happened to me. But words seemed inadequate, unable to capture the magnitude of the experience. How to describe colors to someone who has never seen them? How do you explain music to someone who has never heard it? That's how I felt, trying to share my near-death experience. And then there was that revelation about 2024. Should I tell people? Alert them? But who would believe me? How could I convince someone about something that I didn't even fully understand myself? As the days passed and I grew physically stronger, one thing became clear. I was back, but I was no longer the same Sutton who had fainted that night at the festival. Something fundamental had changed in me, and I knew that my life would never be the same. In the days and weeks following my near-death experience, I went through an emotional roller coaster. On the one hand, I was deeply grateful to be alive, to have the chance to be with my loved ones again. Seeing the relief and joy in my parents' eyes, feeling Evan's tight hug, was something that filled me with indescribable gratitude. But on the other hand, I felt a profound sense of displacement. The world around me, which had once seemed so familiar and comfortable, now seemed strange, almost alien. The everyday concerns that once occupied my thoughts, college exams, bills to pay, small arguments with friends, now seemed trivial, almost insignificant compared to what I had experienced. I tried to get back to my normal routine, but nothing felt normal. I would walk the streets of Austin and see people running around, worried about their daily lives, and I would think, if only they knew, if they could see what I saw. I started to notice things that previously went unnoticed. The beauty of a sunset, the smile of a stranger on the street, the sound of the wind in the trees. Everything seemed charged with a deeper meaning. It was as if I had gained a new pair of eyes, capable of seeing beyond the surface of things. At the same time, I struggled with the revelation about 2024. The knowledge of what was to come weighed on me like a burden. There were times when I would wake up in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat, the visions of that global crisis vivid in my mind. I wanted to do something, say something, but I didn't know where to start. My relationships were also affected. Evan, bless his heart, tried to understand, tried to support me, but I could see the concern in his eyes. He probably thought I was going through some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder, and in a sense, maybe I was. But it was more than that. It was a fundamental change in who I was. My parents and friends also noticed the change. "You look different, Sutton," my mother said to me one day, with a mix of concern and curiosity in her voice. "It's like you've aged years in just a few weeks." She wasn't wrong. I felt older, not physically, but in spirit. As if I had gained wisdom that I shouldn't have at my age. It was during this period that I started meditating. Not for any conscious spiritual reason, but because it was the only way I could feel close to that peace I had experienced on the other side. I would sit in silence for hours, trying to reconnect with that sense of unity of belonging. And sometimes in the quietest moments when my mind finally calmed down, I could almost hear something. It was not the voice I had heard during my experience, but something similar. A whisper, a distant echo, reminding me that there was more to life than what we could see or touch. Slowly, I began to realize that this experience was not an end, but a beginning. The beginning of a journey that I still didn't fully understand, but that I knew I would have to go through. And so day after day, week after week, I tried to find a balance between the world I had left behind and the new world that opened up before me. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to shout to the whole world what I had seen, what I knew was coming. And there were days when I wanted to forget everything, go back to being the Sutton I used to be. But deep down, I knew there was no going back. I had changed. And little by little, I began to accept that this change, no matter how difficult it was part of my path. A path that would somehow take me to 2024 and beyond. As the months passed, I began to accept that my near-death experience was not something to keep to myself. The voice had told me that I had a mission, and little by little, I began to understand what that meant. No, I didn't go around preaching on street corners or trying to convince people of what I had seen. That was never my style, and somehow I knew that wasn't the way. My mission, I realized, was much more subtle. I started paying more attention to the people around me, not just my friends and family, but strangers on the street, co-workers, anyone who crossed my path. And I started to notice things, little signs of suffering, of confusion, of searching for something more. I remembered the visions I had, of me helping people in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. And I realized that's what I was supposed to do, help in any way I could. Sometimes it was something as simple as a smile for a stranger who seemed to be having a rough day. Other times, it was listening to a friend who was going through trouble. Really listening, without judging, without trying to fix it, just being present. I started volunteering at a local homeless shelter. Not because I thought it would change the world, but because I felt like every little act of kindness mattered. Every human connection was important. What about 2024? Well, I still didn't know exactly what would happen, but I began to understand that my role was not to prevent what was coming, but to help people prepare in some way. Not through apocalyptic warnings or scary predictions, but by helping them connect with something bigger than themselves. I started talking more openly about my experience, not to convince anyone, but to offer a different perspective. I shared the peace I had felt, the sense of connection to something greater, and to my surprise, people listened. Not all, of course. There were those who looked at me with skepticism or even pity, but there were others who seemed to find comfort in my words, which seemed to resonate with something within them. Evan, bless him, was by my side throughout this entire process. He still didn't fully understand what I had been through, but he saw the change in me. He saw the positive impact I was having on the people around me, and that was enough for him. I don't know what happened that night, he told me once, but whatever it was, it made you an even more amazing person. His words touched me deeply, because despite all the peace and understanding I had experienced during my NDE, returning to the physical world had not been easy. There were days when I felt lost, confused, almost overwhelmed by the intensity of everything. But knowing that Evan was there, supporting me unconditionally, gave me the strength to keep going. As the years passed, I began to notice subtle changes in the world around me. These were not the big catastrophes or transformations that I had envisioned for 2024, but small signs that something was changing. More people seemed to be questioning the status quo, searching for meaning beyond materialism. There was a growing interest in spirituality, in connection with nature, in alternative ways of living and working. Of course, there were also many problems. Political conflicts, environmental crises, economic inequalities. The world seemed to be heading towards a breaking point. And every time I saw the news, I felt butterflies in my stomach, remembering the visions I had about 2024. But at the same time, I saw hope. I saw people coming together to make a difference, communities forming to support each other. And in every act of kindness, in every moment of human connection, I saw a glimpse of that unity I had experienced on the other side. As 2024 approached, I felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. I didn't know exactly what would happen, but I knew it would be something significant, something that would change the course of humanity. And me? Well, I continued doing what I had been doing for the last few years, helping where he could, offering a kind word here, a listening ear there, sharing my story with anyone who would listen, not to convert anyone, but to offer a different perspective, a hope that there is more to life than what we can see or touch. I don't know if this will make a difference when the crisis arrives. I don't know if I'm really preparing people the way I should, but I know I'm doing the best I can, with the knowledge and experience I have. And in the end, I think that's what we can all do. Doing our best, one day at a time, one person at a time. Because now I know, with a certainty that comes from the depths of my soul, that every act of love, every moment of connection, matters more than we can imagine. Now here I am, on the eve of 2024. It's strange to think that it's been almost 3 decades since that night in Austin, when my life changed forever. So much has happened since then. I married Evan. We had 2 wonderful children. I built a career, made new friends, lost loved ones. I lived a full and rewarding life. But all this time, 2024 was always in the back of my mind. A date that was approaching inexorably, full of expectations and fears. I confess that there are times when I doubt it, moments when I wonder if everything I experienced was real, or just an elaborate construction of my mind in a moment of extreme stress. After all, who am I to have been given a vision of the future? Why me? But then I remember the feeling of absolute peace, the heavenly music, the deep connection with all that is. I remember the voice, gentle but firm, telling me I had a mission, and I know, deep in my heart, that it was real as the ground beneath my feet, as the air I breathe. I look at the world around me and see signs that something big is about to happen. Political tensions are at a boiling point. Climate change is causing increasingly extreme events. Economic inequality has reached alarming levels. It is as if humanity is heading towards a turning point. But I also see hope. I see people coming together in unprecedented ways, transcending borders and cultural differences. I see a collective awakening, a search for something deeper, more meaningful. It is as if, in the midst of the chaos, a new consciousness is emerging. And me? Well, I'm still doing what I've been doing all these years. Helping where I can, sharing my story with anyone who will listen, trying to be a beacon of hope in a world that often seems bleak. I don't know exactly what will happen between October 9th and 13th, 2024. I don't know if it will be a single dramatic event or a series of events that will trigger a global transformation. I don't know if I will be directly involved or if my role will be more subtle, indirect. But I know I'll be ready to help, to comfort, to be a bridge between the old and the new, because that's what my near-death experience taught me, that each of us has a role to play in the grand tapestry of existence. Sometimes when I'm meditating, or in the quiet moments before I fall asleep, I feel that connection again, that feeling of unity, of belonging to something bigger, and in those moments I know I'm not alone, that we are all in some way connected to this great web of existence. So, as the days pass and 2024 approaches, I feel a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Fear of the unknown, yes, but also hope. Hope that, whatever happens, it will be the beginning of something new and better for humanity. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll be up to the challenge that lies ahead, but I know I will do my best. Because that's what I promised that night so many years ago, when I chose to return. And now, as the world prepares to enter 2024, I wait. I wait, and I prepare, and I trust. I trust that whatever comes our way, we will be ready, that somehow we will find strength to face challenges and wisdom to seize opportunities. Because in the end, that's what life is about, isn't it? To face the unknown with courage, to love unconditionally, to make a difference where we can. And if my near-death experience taught me anything, it's that every moment is precious, every connection is sacred, and that there is more to existence than we can see or touch. So here I am, Sutton, 48 years old, waiting for 2024. I don't know what's next, but I know I'll be here, ready for whatever that brings. Because that is my mission. This is my purpose. And who knows? Maybe, when this is all over, I'll have another story to tell. A story of transformation, of rebirth, of hope. A story that, like my near-death experience, can touch hearts and change lives. Until then, I continue living, loving, helping. One day at a time, one person at a time. Because now I know, every act of love, every moment of connection, is a light in the darkness, and together we can light up the whole world.